Hello everybody and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome home everybody. If one of your problems in life includes having nobody to talk to about movies, well buddy, you have just found somebody with that same exact problem. So one, I want to say you're welcome because now we have each other, and two, thank you because I'm hoping you stick around and consider joining here at ZakIsCinema. Today we're going to be reviewing and discussing the movie Scream 4, which came out in 2011. 10 years after the original Woodsboro murders, Sydney returns home just as a new Ghostface emerges, targeting a younger generation obsessed with remakes, fame, and notoriety. Obviously, on the channel here, we have been covering the entire Scream franchise leading up to the brand new Scream 7 coming out in just a couple days here. So if you love Scream, love talking movies, again, consider joining here at ZakIsCinema because we're going to be covering every single one of them, and we're going to be doing some fun ranking lists after Scream 7 comes out, so stay tuned for that. Without further ado, let's jump into the positive section, or just the things that I enjoyed most about this movie. And honestly, I forgot how much I really do enjoy this movie's opening. I think it is one of the best Scream openings in the franchise, right up there with the original for me. And I think what works so well about this movie's opening is it doesn't just spoof Scream's iconic openings that it's known for, it kind of spoofs the genre itself and also helps to layer this idea of a movie within a movie within the movie that you're already watching. I think it is so simple, clever, funny, unique, and genuinely inventive for the genre. And I still remember the first time that I watched the movie's opening, just not really expecting it and the direction that it heads in. You know, when it sets itself up, you're like, okay, this is going to be just a normal kind of Scream opening, but then when it reveals it's a movie within a movie and then does it again, but then you also recognize that you're watching the movie within all these kind of movies. I just find it so interesting. It's more of like a simple satirization of Inception, if Inception was this horror short film just trying to show a concept, if that makes sense. And interesting enough to me, I feel like on rewatch I've noticed how well this franchise really does with its natural character progression, and I love with each sequel how we're kind of catching up with these characters, but all the events from previous films always have a lasting impact for where our characters are at today. I love seeing Sydney here almost a decade after the third movie. She's no longer running, but actively confronting her trauma and experiences through her writing. She's writing a book, she's doing these public appearances. It feels more believable in like this earned evolution of the character, and I just like seeing where she is learning to kind of accept the person that she is, but also not going into hiding or taking a backseat and playing the victim card, even though if she was, everybody would be understanding because that is certainly what I would do. And I think it's equally as refreshing here to see Dewey and Gail actually together this time. It's so cool finally getting to see Dewey catching up with him, being this respected sheriff in Woodsboro. Feels almost very right for the character after surviving now 3 different Ghostface killers, and the movie kind of treats that growth as more serious than we've seen Dewey before. He still has that goofy, kind of nerdy kind of charm to him, but they definitely tone that back a little bit to show that progression of Dewey here. And I like that we don't obviously have to catch up with Dewey and Gail broken up again, working on things to kind of get back together again. That was a complaint I had in Scream 2 and Scream 3, but I'm glad they finally fixed that here with Scream 4. We'll get into it with the next sequel though. But I also think Gale's progression and arc here gets severely overlooked in the franchise. I like when we catch up with her, she is clearly lost without the Ghostface presence, giving her that purpose that she's looking for. And it kind of pushes her back into this investigative mode, which kind of, again, drives that wedge between her and Dewey. But I feel like it's a little bit more natural, kind of seeing it play out rather than just being told. But especially with Gale, I think this progression feels very true to her and true to her character without regressing it or doing the same kind of thing again. And sometimes I forget with Scream 4 just how long it came out after Scream 3. So I like that time difference between the sequels actually have impacts with our characters and we're following up with them as long as we've gone without a sequel in this franchise. I think it's also equally as strong here with the movie's inciting incident. I like, again, seeing Sydney returning to Woodsboro for this book signing on the anniversary of the original murders. And when she comes back that evening, 2 high schoolers are killed in the exact same night in a very similar way. It's familiar, but it kind of works for what Scream always does in its movies, especially because the killer now has to be somebody completely different and removed. It almost kind of provides a sea of new, fresh faces where anybody could kind of be the killer. And I like that this is a little bit more of a violent, vengeful kind of ghost face here, that because it's been 10 years, it can't really be anybody within that group dynamic. So it kind of sets up a new and different feeling mystery, if that makes sense. And like I was just hinting at, I think this is the movie that really hones in and focuses it on being an actual horror slasher movie. It still has its spoofing, satirizing elements, but the kills definitely feel meaner, more realistic, bloodier, and more direct than anything we've seen in the franchise up into this point here. And I really love the shift. If anything, again, I wish they kind of leaned a little bit harder into it, but I'm glad with that time jump that we also see a more serious, violent version of Ghostface. And to me, there's so many standout scenes, not only with its spoofing elements, but also its seriousness with this new Ghostface killer. I love the scene where Jill and Kirby are watching the Shaun of the Dead movie, and I think that perfectly captures its tonal balance. Ghostface kind of taunts them over the phone, claims that he's in their bedroom closet, only to reveal that he is actually across the street at their friend's home in her bedroom closet, and then starts murdering their friend as they're helplessly watching on, hearing and watching all the chaos through their eyes, but also on the phone, since they were on the phone with their friend a little bit earlier. And again, this showcases this meaner Ghostface, where the Ghostface killer kills the friend right in front of them, starts gutting her, and then window slams her through her bedroom window right in front of her friends, just for her friends to watch her have her kind of final breath and final moments here. And I think it's brutal without being too over the top, but it's something the franchise I wish kind of fully embraced from the get-go. And jumping off that point as well, this movie, I think, perfectly balances its both extreme sides, both with the goofy meta humor and the genuinely vicious horror. I love lines that really stand out to me, like, "I'm gonna slit your eyelids in half so you don't blink when I stab you in the face," is a line delivered from one of our Ghostface killers, and it feels like so shockingly aggressive for the franchise of Scream, and I think that's a really good thing here. And one of the best elements of this movie is just how timeless it really is. It worked in 2011, and I think it works even better now. I love how it commentates on horror remakes, where that was a very popular thing in 2011, but the commentary still obviously holds very true because remakes have never really stopped, or this idea of a legacy sequel, which the next Scream movie kind of gets into a little bit more. But I like how just timeless this movie really feels, that even though it came out, 15 years ago, it still feels very relevant in today. I also think this movie has some of the best writing, dialogue, and little funny lines in it. I love the scene with the two cops debating horror cliches in a patrol car, I think when they're sitting out of Sydney and Jill's home. It's very funny, self-aware, and leads directly into the film's one of the most memorable kills in the entire franchise, and I just think that scene really sums up what Scream is all about, so I love little things like that. And we'll get into it here, but I'm definitely putting the killer reveal in my positive section, where it isn't perfect, but it's definitely very surprising and very shocking. Rory Culkin's character being involved isn't the most shocking kind of element. You could kind of see it coming a little bit, but I think Jill as being this mastermind behind the Ghostface killings is very surprising to me. Her motivation of building up all this resentment towards Sydney and inheriting trauma-based fame, wanting to kind of replace Sydney, I think it works for me, especially the context with obsession and notoriety with the themes within this movie here. And I love the idea that Sydney got these movie adaptations based off her trauma and life experiences, while Jill wants a little bit more and wants this real footage kind of angle of her surviving. So she's having all her and her friend, the Ghostface killers, with cameras recording everything. So Sydney gets the movies, but Jill is kind of getting the real life survival documentary angle. It's a distinction that feels very on brand for the franchise and shows its push to evolve some of its commentary here. But with that said, let's jump into my mixed elements I have for the movie. And I think I'm going to jump off where I was kind of praising the movie with also part of its killer reveal. I think the reveal starts to kind of fall apart just a little bit once Jill goes full monologue mode. I like that she is meticulously recreating the original's ending, but instead brutally kills Rory Culkin's character, her boyfriend, and murders everybody else around her just to make sure that she is that sole survival. But then when she gets to Sydney, she hesitates so much and only once kind of halfway stabs her in the stomach. And to me, it just makes no sense given how careful and ruthless she was with this whole entire plan. And especially in this monologue part, it really makes no sense why she wouldn't go all in with killing Sydney. I mean, that's like the one person you gotta make sure you scratch off the bucket list, and she kind of half-assed it so the movie can go on another 10-20 minutes, and obviously we don't want to kill Sydney here, so I just wish that was changed just a little bit. And I think the problems, or at least my mixed feelings, kind of continue with the hospital scene or its second ending. It's fun in theory, and I appreciate how the movie kind of acknowledges that this is like an alternate ending, because it really does feel like that, but the self-awareness doesn't fully excuse how undercooked and kind of frustrating it really comes off. And I think this is in my mix because I don't hate it. It doesn't ruin the movie for me, but you could see so many small elements where they could easily make some changes. For example, one small structural tweak they could really make is having Jill just interrupted before fully killing Sydney and then faking being unconscious next to her, like she was about to do the final blow to Sydney, but the police bust in, so she's just got to like quickly make the best out of her situation, knowing Sydney is knocked out and she's going to take care of it a little bit later. And then I think that would have naturally led to the hospital scene where Jill is kind of panicked at keeping her story together, but then also rushing people out so she can go finish off Sydney, knowing that she's not alive and not having to find that out. I think it would have made Jill a smarter, more vicious killer. It would have made the hospital stuff flow a little bit more seamlessly, and I think with that one small change, it would have fixed a lot of the problems and a lot of those character decision problems with the character of Jill. And lastly, in my mix here, let's just talk about it. Visually, this movie looks undeniably kind of rough and kind of bad. The overexposure and soft Vaseline smeared look to it doesn't ruin it for me, but it is very distracting. At the same time, once you kind of get into it, you can kind of like look past it, but visually, I just not the biggest fan of how they went with visualizing this story here. But let's jump into my negatives, or the things that I just hated about this movie. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of that teenage dialogue and high school scenes are painfully over the top and cringy. I mean, obviously it was in the original, but no offense to these actors, I think the actors in the original maybe just had a little bit more going for them and could pull off that kind of over the top self-aware tone. The off-brand Randy stand-ins, video recording, everything and live streaming, that gimmick kind of feels forced, dated, and nowhere near as charming or clever as the original film lover's nerd kind of energy that it had going for it. It's not unbearable or unwatchable, just I'm nowhere near as invested in some of the teenage characters as I was in that original trilogy. And I think one of my biggest issues with this movie is, despite some strong red herrings and a very surprising killer reveal, this movie feels a little bit more limited in its suspect pool compared to all the originals. Past Scream films made the environments feel suspicious and almost this lived-in character where literally anybody could be the killer, but here the mystery feels a little bit more smaller, more constrained, which feels like a missed opportunity to not lead into that, especially given that it's been 10 years. It really could be anybody, and they don't lean into that enough. I think if they did, made that small tweak with Jill at the end, this would be one of the best killer reveals in the franchise, but also in the slasher genre. But all that being said, I would say overall, Scream 4 is a very sharp, brutal, and surprisingly forward-thinking sequel that fully embraces its slasher violence and modern horror commentary. It does have a messy final act and some awkward character elements, and I think for me that kind of keeps it from reaching the very top of this franchise. But again, my mixed and negatives really don't take away from my enjoyment with this movie. I had a blast watching this movie and think it is extremely underrated within this Scream franchise here. So I think for my rating, I'd want to own this movie on physical media, and I think I'd only pay full price if I could find this cool like limited edition cover, slipcover, or steelbook, but I'd be okay owning it at that discounted price. And oh, would you look at that, I already do, because I bought that I think at a record shop or somewhere, but I'd be okay paying that full price if they came out with a cool anniversary kind of edition, because I think this is an underrated Scream movie. If you haven't seen it in a while, definitely check it out. I think you're going to enjoy it here. But you guys have my thoughts here on Scream 4. Let me know down below what you think of Scream 4. Do you agree with some of my points? Do you disagree? Let me know your thoughts and feelings on this movie down below here. But that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos. It means so much to me, so thanks again. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.